Secret friends, unite!
Hey, friends, welcome back to Oops, All Thunderdome on the Secret Friends Unite podcasting network. This is episode 579. I am your host, your humble servant, Charlie Carden, joined by a returning guest who hasn't been with us in 5 years. So I'm psyched about that. But we finally found something that was kind of worthy of his attention. But before we get to that, I'm joined by my number one partner, which is my lovely wife, April Darling. Hello.
Hello.
And pinwheeling back, I have my high school classmate and film expert. If you could see his background, you would see the glowing beauty of his film collection. Steve Steckedy is back on the pod. Steve, good evening.
Hey, how are you guys doing tonight? And don't forget now pickleball acquaintance.
Pickleball, the man that I dragged into pickleball. Yeah, which because we talk about pickleball on a lot of the podcasts. But yeah, this is our show. If you're tuning in for the first time, let's say, for example, you're joining us from the Trek Geeks Network by association. This is our show where we take a kind of topic of the week, hot new movie, new TV show, comic book, what have you, and we dissect it over about a 30 to 40 minute period. So we cut right to the good stuff, which we're going to do this week by talking about Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey, which I'm just super psyched to talk about this, and especially to have Steve on because he is my film expert, and it's just really great to have him back. But let me get some business out of the way first, and then, of course, having April on because she is my literary expert. She's talked to me about, she rolls her eyes, but she's talked to me about this many, many times, and I wanted to have kind of the two perspectives on that. But first, let me get some business out of the way. Always want to give some love and respect to the great folks over on our Secret Friends Unite Patreon, over at patreon.com/Secret Friends Unite, where you do get a lot of exclusive programs, including a great Bad Movies podcast that April and I do together. We've got another episode coming up soon. All of our shows come out early. This show, for example, comes out on a Thursday every week, where it comes out Tuesday on Patreon. Exclusive channel for all of our patrons over on the Discord, and a lot of great stuff. Your first week free sign up, even if you stay free. We signed up a lot of free patrons at Trek Long Island last month, which we were very excited to have those people join us. But it's then half off your first month, and really you end up staying on board after that for as little as $2 a month. So we would absolutely love to have you, even just so that you can kind of see what we're up to. Patreon.com/Secret Friends Unite. All right, let's get into the meat. The Odyssey. 2026, and like an idiot, I have never seen any previous filmed incarnation of this. I was like, is this the first time anybody's ever doing this? Like, I'm a moron, Steve. So you're really gonna have to baby me on this one. But I'm gonna give a quick rundown. Gonna give some facts, and then I'm gonna turn it into usually our regular rundown, which is what I call the Marquise of Queensberry rules. No spoilers. Given a non-spoilery rating, and then we spoiler through some questions and some different stuff and some thoughts. So, all right, The Odyssey, 2026 fantasy action film, written and directed by Christopher Nolan, as I had said. And it wasn't written by; it was a screenplay written by, but he didn't travel back in time and conk Homer over the head and write the whole thing. But again, it's an adaptation of an ancient Greek poem by Homer, not Simpson, called The Odyssey. Matt Damon is Odysseus, the Greek king of Ithaca, chronicling his long and perilous journey home from the Trojan War, his encounters with mystical beings as he attempts to reunite with his wife Penelope, portrayed by Anne Hathaway. And I'm glad they didn't make me try to say the name of Tom Holland's character. You want to give that a stab for me, Steve? Do you remember?
Telemachus.
Oh, thank you so much. Tom Holland, Robert Pattinson, Lupita Nyong'o, Samantha Morton, Zendaya, and Charlize Theron. I was having a conversation tonight and couldn't remember Charlize Theron's name to save my life. I don't know why I can never remember her name. She's so memorable, just not what the hell you call her. Nolan studied several translations of the Odyssey, and he depicted a realistic interpretation of Greek mythology, drawing from inspiration from epic historical films, Andrei Rublev, 1966, and Ran from 1985, as well as the special effects from folks like the legendary Ray Harryhausen. Filming took place in Feb to August of 2025 in Morocco, Greece, Italy, Scotland, Iceland, the Western Sahara, and Malta, as well as the Universal's lot in Los Angeles. The Odyssey is among the first films to ever be shot in IMAX 70 millimeter cameras. The film bowed on July 17 in the US and the UK, made available on IMAX and large screen formats, including right here in Grand Rapids with our own Celebration Cinemas, one of the true IMAX screens in the country, as I am made to understand it. The film has received acclaim, particularly with praise to Nolan's direction. So here's some of the basics. Estimated budget, $250 million with a opening estimated weekend of $124,264,000 global, sitting at a 95% on Rotten Tomatoes, so very, very fresh. 97% of audiences love it. It's pretty cool stuff. All right, let's break it down. Steve, I'm going to pinball it over to you. We're keeping it spoiler free. Give me a top line review and a 1 to 10 score for the layman, for somebody who's going to hear what we have to say and then pause this, go see the movie, and then come back. Shoot.
Okay, well, the Christopher Nolan's Odyssey, to me, I have two schools of thought with it. Well, we'll start with a super positive right now. I am a Nolan fan my entire existence that he's been around. He is one of my favorite directors, primarily because of the gravity that he brings, I feel that he brings to every subject that he shoots. If you just look back through his history of Dark Knight and Memento and Interstellar, all his movies have this gravitas to me just by the way they're technically done. Just the camera work. It's not just the IMAX, but it's the camera placement. He's kind of like Kubrick to me, but a little less precise. But he has this gravity, so everything has this weight. Dark Knight has this weight. It feels very real. So I was very excited to go in and see this. And I have to say, my first thought coming out of the theater was I have not enjoyed a theater sitting this much in a long time. Now, I say theater sitting versus movie because I may get into a little bit later, but while we were there in the moment, we did see it at 7:30 a.m. with our coffee, center IMAX, full 70 millimeter. I was absolutely entrapped by its tone and its style as it came through. I am familiar. I was a Latin student in high school. I have been to Greece, all through Greece. I have read the Odyssey a couple times. I'm not a historian at all, and it's been many years, but I have rudimentary good ideas about it. So I was curious to see how I was going to execute it. He did not fail in most respects, for me at least, in just seeing this unfilmable epic put up there. I don't think there's a better director who could ever have done what he did. So the acting, I thought, for the most part, was fantastic. The visual effects were pretty seamlessly put in there as far as he doesn't typically use them, but he mixed them really well this time with puppets and with physical effects. And a lot of it just does add that gravity again with the with certain scenes, no spoilers yet, with what's going on. So I walked out I caught my breath a few times and things. I'm a movie person who absolutely loves the goosebumps I get in theater. And he's one of the few directors that I can still sit in the theater and go, catch my breath with just the way that he shoots something. So yeah. I had a blast with this movie.
Excellent.
I had a blast with my time in the theater. I would probably rate it about an 8.5. I'm going to think for my feelings on that movie. I've got some things to say about it, but I'm going to leave it at that to start.
Excellent. Very good. April.
I would echo some of the things that Steve said. Obviously, there's a lot of historical references. There's a lot of mythos there that rings true today. Like if you look at Greek mythology, you're going to see a lot of the things that were echoed in this movie. He did really well with his interpretation of the poem, and I actually give it a 9, I think.
Yeah. I kind of fell in the same space, and I'm coming in totally blind. Steve was much more the academic when we were in high school. I didn't do Latin. I wasn't AP. I was a dummy. So I watched Star Trek. So I was not so well versed, but having not read it, and maybe I did read it in college or high school, I just don't even know anymore. But being a big fan, obviously, of Nolan, particularly of really discovering his work through his Batman trilogy, which as a comic guy just probably the finest comic film ever made was The Dark Knight, in my opinion, still. This was a film to me that really, it meant spectacle and meant earning the wonder of what can be put on that big screen. And with all of the missteps that have happened in cinema in the last several years, and really in particular this summer. I mean, Steve, I know you don't go to the movies a lot. You and I have had a lot of conversations because a lot of modern stuff, you're like, and I don't disagree with you. There are a lot of turds out there. And this summer, Supergirl is a great example. The Mandalorian and Grogu was a great example of something that just did not land. And this was landing like a mofo, to watch my language. And I would love to see this be something that turns the table, but we can definitely talk about that kind of more as time goes by. All right. Going to pop it back to Steve. We're going to open the floodgates, pop that hose open. The spoilers are on. If you have not seen the film, please definitely pause right here. Come back to us after you do. But boy, this is really something you got to get out there and see. Steve, let's talk about your favorite moments. Spoilers are totally fine. Give me a couple, 3 things that you totally dug on.
Okay. Well, I would say, and this was touching for me at the time, and without going into a lot of detail, there's a lot of stuff going on in my personal life right now with members of the family. So there was a lot of things that was hitting on really different fronts of me, especially about the father-son mechanism and getting home. Obviously, if you know the Odyssey, it's kind of a dual story in some sense of a son searching for his father searching for their way home through all these troubles. There's a very famous scene that even if you haven't seen the book or read the book or the poem or seen the movie, that you probably heard of just in growing up, and that had to do with the sirens. And if you're not familiar with the sirens are in the movie and in the mythology, they are bird-like women who basically are there to sing their song, and they lure sailors with their beautiful songs off their ship to dive into the water to their doom.
Right.
And that was, as a kid, that always struck me as a wow, the imagination went wild with that. And I was absolutely hoping that when we were aiming into that scene, I was sitting there, I leaned over to my girlfriend and I said, I really hope they do what I think they're going to do. And they did what I was hoping they do. They put you in the headspace of Odysseus, who stuffs his, they put you in the headspace of most of the sailors,
right,
stuffing their ears, while Odysseus chooses to tie himself to the mast and take the punishment, as it were.
Right.
But we, as an audience, are treated through the sonic oral levels of being stuffed in the ears. So the soundtrack devolves into this wonderful, screechy, siren, wailing sea, all this blistering kind of energy going on. And what it did for me was I started to get like those chills again, because I was sitting there, I was watching Odysseus railing against this, wanting to get off the boat. A couple people start jumping, or one person jumps off the boat,
right,
and they want to hear it. They see him. And that just really hit me, because I love sound married with vision, married with trying things. I heard a lot of people say, I wanted to hear what the sirens, were singing. And I'm just like, no, you don't. That's not what you want to imagine, that kind of thing.
Right.
That was, that makes that 10 times more powerful. And Nolan always does that. He does that with sound. I mean, even in like Dunkirk, and you're in the plane, you just hear the roar of the engines and the shudder of the glass and everything. And it's all those little minute details that make you feel like you're there, which he does with his movies. But more importantly with that scene, and I'll wrap it up, is I think there's a later point when Odysseus is kind of recalling that event to, I forget who he was recalling that event to. And he said a line in there that really hit me. And I might ask April about this a little, because this has part of the issue that I had with some of the movie. But he said some line about maybe not wanting to go home. And that really just hit me in the face for some reason. Just this man out there at sea trying to get home, but as he's kind of working through things in his head, wondering what may be waiting for him, will he ever make it? And he just, this siren's call made him question if he wanted to go back to all that to begin with. And that's after him spending time with Calliope on the island, and or that happened later maybe.
What's her? I thought her name was Callisto. No, wasn't she Callisto? Was it Calliope?
Is it Calliope?
I got confused.
Callisto, April.
Charlize Theron's character.
Callisto.
Yeah.
It's Callisto. Sorry, Callisto. Yeah. Circe was the other. Yeah. So anyways, that line just really hit me, and I'm one of those movie people that I can really like wrap up on one scene and be like, oh, chef's kiss. That was like a great scene, that moment for me. There were about 7 of them, that I was like jazzed up, but that one hit my favorite.
Yeah. Nice. April, how about a big hitter for you?
I know everybody's talking about Matt Damon and his performance, but I thought Anne Hathaway did fantastic.
I agree.
I
Totally.
loved her interpretation of Penelope. So the scenes where, where she was involved and she was talking to her suitors, and you knew that she didn't actually want to be with any of those suitors. She wanted her husband to come back and to return, and she knew he was out there. So I really liked her performance and everything that she did throughout the film.
Yeah. For me, it was Damon. And I think about Matt Damon that he's always been an incredible actor, but he's done tent poles. It was a tent pole run through. What did I write down here? Good Will Hunting teamed up with Spider-Man, Catwoman, and MJ, not Mary Jane, Michelle Jones, to fight, and Batman was the bad guy. It was just, he brought in all of his, it's reminded of theaters gone by and the troupe of actors. I mean, Steve, you'll appreciate this being as involved in theater as you are. Every really serious director that I'm aware of has their faves, has their gauntlet of people that they like to work with, and I feel like he brought in the muses, if you prefer. Almost anybody that you could think. I can't believe that Guy Pearce didn't slide in here somewhere. Maybe he was in here somewhere. I was listening to one of the podcasts that I always listen to, the Weekly Planet, which is an Australian podcast today. But when he visits the realm of the dead, when he's in Hades, the guy who is speaking, that's James Remar. Who is an absolutely incredible actor. April, that's Dexter's father, and a guy who has been in just absolutely anything that you can imagine. But who the hell wasn't in this movie? I mean, and like I said, Matt Damon, I know, is sideways to my thought, has always been incredible, but again, been in tent poles. He was the hell was that? What are those movies like Jason Bourne that April likes? Which I'm just like, it's another dumb action movie, but he is truly incredible. This was. I have no notes. I have no notes on anything that he did. He just blew my mind.
You forgot the Punisher. The Punisher was.
John.
Yes.
John Bernthal, who I love. April and I were talking about accents. So Bernthal, who is from New York City, just does New York City, where Tom Holland didn't try to speak with his own accent, but he also didn't. And then April said, no, I said, well, he sounded a bit like Spider-Man. She says, no, he wasn't really doing a Queen's accent. He was doing an American-ish, because that was pretty much what you were getting out of everybody.
Yeah.
They kind of picked one accent and stuck with it because they weren't going to be speaking Greek or trying to do an accent or something. So I appreciate that choice. I know, Steve, you and I talked a week or so ago, and you said, well, I know it sounds like he's tilting more traditional with a lot of his takes. I think this is what you said to me.
I was speaking from what I heard, right? And you can never hear things before you see something. Then when you get there, obviously your world changes. And yeah, when I heard they were going to basically be just using common modern, English speaking rather than King's English or anything like, the bad guys in Star Wars did, that kind of give
the Empire. Right.
I was a little put off because I'm not a purist at all, but I kind of hope that they would have a little more regal, language to it. And some of the spots in the commercial using the word dad and all that, I mean, people can fight over that all they want. I will say that after sitting down and getting through the movie, that wears away in 5 minutes. For the most part, outside a line or two here. And then I did wrestle with afterwards going, I did wish it was still in a little more proper English, but nobody would have gotten. I mean, unfortunately, most people would have just tuned out, I think.
Yeah, there would have been no benefit to the storytelling, I don't think, without a doubt.
Shakespeare or anything, but I just think it's a hard enough thing to get unless you're invested, and that would have been just one more hurdle that people need to invest in. So. And
it's tougher and tougher to make audiences. Now, obviously, this film was a big hit, and it's going to go on to be, but it's harder to make modern audiences make those kind of commitments, making that leap of faith to jump beyond, a generation that grew up watching YouTube clips. You know what I mean? My kids too. So I totally get it. So something else, Steve, something else that you really dug?
Well, again, I think it was just the gravity of it. I put in Dunkirk that when I got home that night, I was like, I'm on a Nolan train. I gotta keep this going on. And 5 minutes into Dunkirk again, I was like, it's just this gravity. These shots are so precision, and as a movie lover and a technical lover on the side, just knowing what they had to accomplish on these boats, how they had to use mirrors to let actors see each other around, how big the camera casing was and stuff. I mean, nobody was actually looking at each other and stuff. So that feat and accomplishing how that translated to a movie narrative, I thought was stunning. there were, Nolan likes to play with time a little bit, non-linear storytelling. At the beginning, it was a little bit hard to, kind of keep going on, going on. But as soon as the 20-minute marker hit and you picked up, I was off on the ride. And I was wrestling with my knowledge and what are we doing here? And this is a little different here. But I kept pulling myself back because of the sheer magnitude of just filmmaking that was on there. And, just one thing I want to say, I read all kinds of, reviews back and forth, both sides. And you get a lot of people like, this sucks, it's crap, all that kind of stuff. And I'm just going, you can't even use words like that. You don't have to like the movie. But you can't use words like this is crap or sucks.
I wanted more explosions. You're right.
Yeah, because the effort and the patience and timing and the effort that just went into that is just the magnitude is stunning to me. So
yeah. Yes, April. Another happy spot for you.
I enjoyed the art of the storytelling, which is what even the poem was all about. I mean, that's how it was introduced originally. It was orally, and this is just another form of that. So it was very artfully done.
Right. Well, every cloud has to have a silver lining or the reverse of a silver lining. So things that we didn't like, I'll go first, and maybe it's unpopular opinion. I don't really care for Elliot Page. I was going to say Ellen Page. I'm sorry. Absolutely nothing to do with the fact that he's a trans actor. I've just always found that performer to be incredibly flat. And it wasn't an enormous role, but it was an important one. And I felt like maybe something else could have been served by having, I don't know, somebody else in there with a little bit of muscle. I don't know. I mean, what am I totally alone on this? Anybody else a huge fan of Elliot Page and it's just me?
Not one way or the other from my part here. We haven't seen a lot since the transition, so I don't have a huge bar for whatever. But I want to actually ask April if you're more familiar with the story. If I'm correct, that character is not in the Odyssey. That is actually like a shorthand for Achilles. That's why everybody was kind of talking about that from the Iliad, right? That scene is not even kind of in the piece.
Right.
So, I was more like, they put a completely non-existent character that is obviously causing some controversy into this piece at the beginning here. So I was kind of just more pulled out of it by that, but not in a bad way. I mean, I did think the character served the story in the way that needed to.
Agreed.
And that'll go up to a higher, my more complaint, or not even complaint, my more musings on what this whole movie meant to me afterwards. So, yeah.
Gotcha. April, anything for you that was like, eh?
I wish in the poem, Telemachus actually has a little bit more of a part as far as his travels, his journey.
Yeah, that did seem pretty truncated.
And that seemed it seemed like they could have expanded on that a little bit, because it is supposed to be both of their journeys. Now, yes, he did still come into manhood, but he still seemed weaker than he should have been, in my opinion.
I did like, that was one thing I noted, and I didn't write it down here, but I did like, I think, April, I told this to you, that they didn't give him a Spider-Man-ish kind of moment when he's fighting at the end and he's like, now I'm going to kick ass, where the other guy was he was trying to fight the guy who was trying to hack through the ceiling so he could throw the swords and stuff down. That guy was still knocking the shit out of him and stabbed him and everything. So he was still, not a warrior. But they didn't say, well, I've had this great moment where I'm inspired, or, I've got adrenaline and now I can lift this, and I can lift this thing up over my head. So that seemed a little bit more grounded. And again, it's a character that you expect that he would start doing flips and shit, like Spider-Man, or doing something to be more of a contribution of kind of fighting back. But no, that was not really his deal. So they kind of honored the character that way. I didn't get, until I saw my friend Ryan Airy from Screen Crush, that the gigantic silver-clad killers were in fact, that was in the Island of Cannibals. And I didn't get that, but I don't think it was really important. So it's like, that's not even really a nitpick, because what were they going to do? Have them grab a guy and bite his head off like the giant monster did? That it's not really that important.
April, if I'm correct, those are the Lystrogonians, right?
Yes.
Okay, so they're the cannibal race, I believe, but they did not. Yeah, they weren't meant to look like those guys from Sky Captain, like big robots, that were like storming robots that were coming out.
I haven't seen that movie since it came out, but I remember loving it. I remember loving it, Sky Captain.
And that that was maybe a shortcoming. It was a cool scene, but it completely felt far too short for what was supposed to, that the Odyssey is almost like this set piece after set piece. We reach an island, we run, and something bad happens, we run away.
Right.
We reach an island, we run, and
right.
That one just felt kind of like stilted. I would have rather them just scrap that one and elongate Scylla and Charybdis or
yeah, you're right, because that was very brief, because they jammed together the Island of Sirens and Charybdis, and then and then Scylla, which was the big tentacled beast, because that was a less than 7 to 10 minute sequence where
maybe.
And it's not like their visit to the Island of Cannibals was super long, but it was it was just another way for us to show up and we're going to lose 15 more guys this way, or they lost 2 boats because the guys got out there and were like smashing it.
Well, right, April, in the story though, it smashes half their fleet. It really decimates them to be there, and that's
a larger
another
fleet.
Yeah.
There's not to my big point yet, but there was a lot of shorthands and stuff that I kind of wish they kind of addressed a little bit more. I mean, he was out there for 20 years between the 10 years of the sacking of Troy and the 10 years time home. It's a very long time that everybody's waiting. And when you're sitting there thinking in modern terms of Penelope sitting back home with suitors in her house for years on end who are just lazing about more or less and waiting around for years, it's we don't quite gravitate. The movie didn't quite paint that picture of that length, but so I just but how do you do that? Right. I mean, you film the unfilmable almost, you gotta do shorthand. So I'm not gonna complain on that.
Right. Absolutely right. Well, cool. Final thoughts. I've kind of said it all, and again, not coming from kind of the background that April has and the history part of it, and not being the film guy that Steve is, because he's the film guy that I know. I was just delighted. I was thrilled. It was, it was an epic scale of storytelling that you are just not going to find around the corner, in the midst of what kind of feels like a desert of a true movie going experience. I feel like that this really delivered. So I love the story. I'm very great. I'm happy for its success, and I'm hoping for more, and not hoping for more of this story because the story's been told. But I'm just always looking forward to obviously seeing what he does next and how he kind of throws us next. So yeah, Steve, final thoughts.
Okay, well, I did have one question. I don't want to pitch this back up, but I'm going to actually aim this.
Please.
One of the, like I said, it was a wonderful movie-going experience, but then when I walked out of the theater elated, and I've been chewing on it for the last couple of days, then that's what kind of started knocking my thing down, because I really started having more of this existential thought that, Charlie, you and I have talked about modern-day movies, and just that the sensibilities are different, and they're just not lying anymore. I'm not complaining, but the way they film them, the shorthand they have to take now for the TikTok audience and stuff, it just is not what film is to me anymore. Have been really chewing on, and maybe April can elaborate on this a little bit. In Homer's Odyssey, which has obviously been translated multiple times over the years, and I know he used multiple sources of translation, I felt at the end of the day, though, that the motivations that they gave Odysseus and a lot of the characters in this movie were not the motivations that were intended by the original poem. To me, and again, this is where I want you talking to April. I've always found, Odysseus is a hubris-full. They called him a genius. He was an ass. He would go after what he wanted to get. He struggled and strifed, and he got through this. At the sacrificing his men, we're going to get home. It was his hubris that kind of brought him down, and again and again. This movie kind of rewrote the entire reason he came home. And are we in spoiler land still?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they kind of rewrote it that he had PTSD, and I was like, that's more modern, and that works.
Yeah, very much so. The concept of it, yeah.
But then, and it actually worked for me a lot. I mean, even the him not wanting to go home and the sirens thing, that was more of this modern spin where it absolutely hit me in the feels while I was in the moment. But then I started thinking about myth and how it changed, and how a lot of people take entertainment and facts and fiction, and they take the shortest route to it. And I was thinking, wow, everybody's going to come out of this movie loving it and thinking differently of what the myth was, right? And we as humans change myth through time, but this fundamentally changed some motivations differently, and that's just something that I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but that's been really sitting with me for the last couple of days. What does that mean? Because I thought his motivations originally were good character study, strong, and he got punished when he should have. His hubris cost him, and he learned a big lesson. A lesson I think we all keep trying to teach ourselves today, but a lot of the time we keep taking those notes out of older movies and replacing them with different versions today that I'm like, well, you took away a really good lesson and put a decent lesson in there, but I that. And so, this Greek culture's 3,000-year-old myth that is so paramount to their society and whatever. And like, right, the dawn of Western civilization is kind of founded on some of this myth. Just to kind of change it to for modern audiences. I always have a little bit of issue with that from time to time if it's kind of taken away from what I thought was the heat of the story. So that was really the reason I had such a blast at the movie, because it's a technical marvel. It's a great movie. But then, that's what's been eating at me on the way out. And I guess that's what good film is. You can't, you got to think through things, and certainly can't just a lot to think about. April,
can't just let go.
Thoughts?
I think some of it. Yes, you can interpret it as being PTSD. Like all of these things happened, and I allowed them to happen. I caused this, but I also think it's the growth journey. And like, I have changed over these 20 years. Has Penelope also changed? Like, what else has happened while I've been gone? And that fear that exists. I don't think it was just the PTSD, but there were other struggles happening as well.
Yeah, and I was just using shorthand. Obviously it was very broken up about the fall of, Troy, and then there was this whole message of conquering and it's tying into modern, a lot of modern thoughts. And so I'm not saying one way or the other. It was just it's just another example of how we as humans going through time change our stories to accommodate modern things.
Right.
How often should we? When shouldn't we? That kind of thing, which there's no answer to that one. But that's what I've been chewing on from this awesome movie.
I hear you. Yes, and absolutely. And like you said, because it keeps making you think and keeps you engaged means that it really spoke to you. And I like that. All right. I'm going to rock it through some fun facts. Nolan wanted a distinctive musical score for the film that had no orchestra. So composer Ludwig Göransson, who's the guy who did the music from The Mandalorian, developed a soundtrack around Greek instruments, bronze gongs, the lyre, and the what is that? Aulos flute? A-U-L-O-S? Anybody?
A-U-L Aulos, probably Aulos.
There you go. He did research with historians to create that flute and the lyre, and these instruments no longer exist. That's dedication. The underworld sequences were filmed in Iceland in June during the eerie all-day light of the midnight sun in desolate terrain under windy and rainy conditions. Nolan specifically chose Iceland to represent Hades because of its cold, remote landscape, felt as far as possible from Odysseus' Mediterranean home. That's awesome. The Cyclops, what's his name? Polyphemus. Oh, there we go. Was depicted by means of a 6 by 6 meter tall anthropomorphic animatronic puppet. There you go, like Ray Harryhausen, like the animation of old. Anne Hathaway went through weeks of weaving lessons with a specialist in Northern California who taught her to work with ancient style looms, progressing from a simple starter loom to a much larger one, specifically so she could convincingly portray Penelope's famous weaving in the film. And then finally, the total number of costumes designed and produced for the Odyssey was 5,300, created by a team that at its peak included more than 500 people working across Los Angeles, Morocco, Italy, Greece, Iceland, Scotland, Spain, England, New York, and New Zealand. Unfriggin' believable. It's just a scale of absolutely unbelievable regard. So, Steve, please.
I have one more little fun fact I actually heard today just watching an interview with them. If you remember the scene with Cersei with the men eating in the witch's hut, and how she turns them into animals and pigs and whatnot. That scene was very hectic and crazy, and you could kind of see her like massaging these guys' heads and everything because she's kind of sculpting out of clay. That's kind of the analogy, I believe. In the book. That was puppets for the most part. I heard that today as I was watching him pull. There's just quick shots of her like pulling a snout out. I'm talking like 10 frames, like that kind of thing. And but the two of the actors who are in the scene were like, those were puppets. That they, a lot of that there was no CG in that scene, and that was all there. They were doing at the table. Now that doesn't mean they might not have gone in like they did with the Cyclops and CG'd up, out the seams of the puppet, and
zhuzhed it up
all
a
that
bit,
kind of stuff. But I thought that was pretty good because that was terrifying to watch. I mean, that's a
Yeah.
Nolan needs to do a horror movie now after those two scenes in this movie.
Right.
Right?
Oh my God.
Right?
Yeah. Big time.
Or a film noir. That's the other thing I think he needs to do.
Yeah, absolutely incredible. And Steve, real quick, April and I, we did not see this in IMAX because I sitting in those damn IMAX chairs just kind of drives me nuts. How would you, just real quickly to wrap things up, how would you quantify the IMAX experience versus if you went and sat and saw it in 2D today? What's different?
Well, I will say this. My first thought, somebody texted me when I got out of the movie and I said, you need to see this in IMAX. This is the only movie ever made that demands to be seen in IMAX. And that's probably going to sound hyperbolic, but I see all kinds of movies. I do have a theater in my basement, so I get to see movies kind of better than most do on the average. So I only really go to movies to see IMAX usually because it's that much grander.
Yeah.
It's just, again, something about that gravity of that screen or that size and that aspect ratio with what you see just, for me, traps and holds anything that's showing in a much heavier space. So I'm not going to say it's a different movie, and most people don't care about that. So I would suggest everybody try to see it, but as Charlie pointed out before, there's only 25 IMAX theaters in all of this entire country, and we actually happen to have one here. So good luck getting seats because it's been sold out forever.
Yeah.
But I did appreciate it for being an IMAX, but I don't think it's going to would take away.
Yeah, I hear you. And as we mentioned, we're here in Grand Rapids, Michigan, the wonderful people at Celebration Cinemas, of which Steve and I have friends within that family because we went to high school with them. Please go support them and support your local theaters no matter what, no matter how you see the film. But get out and see this film. You will absolutely not be sorry. It'll be one of the greatest things I think you've seen in a very long time. But that wraps us up. Good stuff, Steve. It's been too long. We got to find a way to bring it back more often. I know that you're not a huge on social media kind of guy, but if people want to engage, I know that you're a filmmaker. If people want to engage with you or your business, how would they do that?
Oh, I appreciate that. Well, a couple things. I do co-host the Broadway Grand Rapids podcast with Jennifer Pascoe. I've been doing that for about 3 or 4 years. Co-host and produce if you're a theater person downtown, so you can catch me there on Spotify or Apple, which is Broadway Backstage Buzz. Also a video producer, own a company called Shutterworks Media. That's Shutterworks with an E, W-E-R-K-S, shutterworksmedia.com. And then I'm just, on Facebook, and that's about it. I don't do a ton of social media. I'm old.
We're old too. We're with all three of us are the same age, but yes, I was just, yeah. And April, what about you, dear?
At the April Carden on Instagram, and you can ask me about growing up in Ithaca, Michigan. Slightly different than the Ithaca represented here, but I did grow up in Ithaca, Michigan.
It is the county seat of Gratiot County. Very exciting stuff. It is great. Big old county courthouse.
There's a and then cornfield next to the high school. It's great.
You can see the stadium, the biggest part of town, from 127. And you can find me and of course all of Secret Friends Unite social media. We are everywhere except for X and TikTok. Secret Friends Unite, any of those places. I am at the C3 THECEETHREE. And then of course secretfriendsunite.com is where you can find all of our stuff. Of course, our YouTube channel. I do a relatively good job of keeping up with my little 3-minute kitchen chats where I cover stuff really briefly that we do not have the opportunity to talk about on this show. You'll find that on YouTube and all those socials, but tune in. We would love to hear from you. But again, Steve, thank you for joining. We'll find another project for you real soon. April, I'll see you in a few minutes since we're in the same house. But everybody, thank you for tuning in. I'm going to tell you, as always, that sharing is caring, and to keep on trucking.
Thank you much, sir.
This podcast is part of the Secret Friends Unite podcasting network, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and podcast services around the galaxy, as well as video on our YouTube channel. You can support Secret Friends Unite by becoming a Patreon member, get bonus programs and more over at patreon.com/secretfriendsunite. Join our Discord community for even more discussions on all things geek. For all the latest updates on Secret Friends Unite, make sure to follow us on Threads at secret.friends.unite and visit secretfriendsunite.com. Find our merchandise at TeePublic and Redbubble. Thanks for listening, and may the Force live long and prosper.